Move and she dies, the man holding her hissed, his breath reeking of cigarettes and desperation. The knife was already at Susan's throat when the three Korean men walked into the warehouse. Susan's art gallery opening had turned into a nightmare exactly 47 minutes ago. One moment she'd been celebrating her first solo exhibition in Seoul. The next she was being dragged through a back door, thrown into a van, and brought to this abandoned building that smelled like rust and death. "Let her go," Song Min-jun, the tallest of the three men said, his voice so calm it was terrifying. "This is between our families. She's innocent." "Innocent?" The man called Min-jun laughed, pressing the blade harder until Susan felt warm blood trickle down her neck. "Your family married her yesterday. Signed the treaty with her blood. That makes her a Kang now. And Kangs die tonight." "We will make you scream tonight," the second man said, but he wasn't talking to her kidnapper. His eyes locked onto Susan's with such intensity she forgot to breathe. Not from fear. Not from pain. From pleasure so intense you'll forget your own name. But first, we save you. Close your eyes, Susan. What comes next isn't for gentle souls. She didn't close her eyes. She watched as all three men moved with synchronized precision that seemed impossible. The third brother, the quiet one, threw something that glinted in the dim light. The knife disappeared from her throat. Min-jun screamed. Then there was blood, so much blood, and Susan was falling, and strong arms caught her before she hit the concrete. "Breathe," a voice commanded in her ear. "Just breathe. You're safe now. We've got you." But as Susan looked up at three identical faces splattered with blood that wasn't theirs, she wondered if safe was the right word. Before we continue, please hit the subscribe button because this story goes places you've never seen before. This isn't your typical romance. This is darker, stranger, more addictive than anything you've watched. Susan's about to discover her marriage is just the beginning of something impossible. 18 hours before the kidnapping, Susan had been in her cramped Atlanta apartment, staring at an email that made no sense. "Congratulations. Your work has been selected for the prestigious Seoul Contemporary Art Prize. Your exhibition opens in 3 days. All expenses paid. Visa expedited. This is a career-changing opportunity." Susan Parker didn't win things. Black girls from the South Side who painted weird surrealist nightmares about cultural displacement didn't get international recognition. They got rejection letters and "we'll keep your portfolio on file" responses. "This is a scam," she'd told her grandmother, who was having a good day for once, sitting up in bed, her dark skin no longer the gray it turned when the lupus flared badly. "Baby, when God opens a door, you don't question the hinges," Grandma said. "You walk through and see where it leads." Maybe this is your blessing finally arriving. Susan had almost deleted the email. But then she'd seen her grandmother wince, trying to hide pain, and remembered the $47,000 in medical debt they'd accumulated in the past 6 months alone. Maybe the prize came with money. Maybe this was how she'd finally save her family. She'd boarded the plane to Seoul with nothing but her portfolio, her best dress, and hope sharp enough to cut. The gallery opening was smaller than she'd expected. Intimate. Maybe 20 people, all Korean, all watching her with expressions she couldn't read. The exhibition space was beautiful though, her paintings lit perfectly, making the African masks melting into Korean hanbok look exactly as unsettling as she'd intended. "Your work is extraordinary," a woman said in perfect English. Elderly, elegant, leaning on a cane that probably cost more than Susan's education. "You paint displacement like it's a living thing." "Thank you," Susan said, surprised by the specific observation. Most people just called her work interesting or bold, gallery speak, for they didn't understand it but were too polite to say so. "I paint what it feels like to belong nowhere fully. Too American for Africa, too African for America. Always straddling, never landing." "Yes," the woman said, her eyes gleaming with something Susan couldn't name. "That's exactly why you're perfect." "Perfect for what?" The woman smiled. "For my grandsons. They too live between worlds, belonging nowhere, accepted by no one. You understand splitting. They need someone who understands." Before Susan could ask what that meant, the woman had moved away, leaving only expensive perfume and confusion behind. Then the lights had gone out. Someone grabbed her. A cloth over her mouth, chemical sweet. And darkness. She'd woken in the warehouse with a knife at her throat and 3 men who looked like avenging angels walking through the door. Now she was in their car, a black Mercedes that probably cost more than her life, speeding through Seoul's night-lit streets while one of them pressed gauze to her neck. The cut isn't deep, Shin said. He was the one holding the gauze, the one with the scar bisecting his left eyebrow. You'll have a thin line for a few days, then nothing. We got to you fast. Who are you? Susan asked. Her voice sounded strange, distant. Shock, probably. Your husband's, Day said from the driver's seat. He didn't take his eyes off the road. As of yesterday, legally married in a ceremony you don't remember because you weren't there. Susan's brain stuttered. What? The art prize was fake, Wu explained. He was in the passenger seat, typing rapidly on his phone. We created it. Lured you to Seoul. Married you by proxy using documents you unknowingly signed when you accepted the exhibition terms. You've been our wife for 26 hours. That's insane, Susan said. That's illegal. That's necessary, Day corrected. The Song clan was about to break a 70-year-old treaty. The only way to prevent war was to fulfill the marriage clause. We needed a bride who met very specific requirements. African descent, artistic, between 22 and 25, unmarried, and completely unconnected to Korean crime families. I'm not staying married to strangers, Susan said, anger cutting through her shock. I'm going to the police, the embassy, my grandmother, someone. Your grandmother, Shin said gently, is currently in Emory University Hospital's ICU. She was admitted 4 hours ago with acute kidney failure. The doctors say she needs immediate dialysis and possibly a transplant. Cost estimate is $400,000 to start. The world tilted. No, she was fine yesterday. She was sitting up talking, she was fine. Lupus doesn't announce its attacks, Wu said, still typing. But the hospital bills do. Your siblings are there now. Marcus just turned 18 last week. Maya is still 17. If your grandmother dies, they go into the system unless someone can prove financial stability to take guardianship. Can you prove that, Susan? She couldn't. She could barely afford her own rent. We can, Day said. All medical expenses paid. Experimental treatments if needed. Your grandmother gets the best care in the world. Your siblings stay together, college fully funded. Your debts erased. In exchange, you stay married to us for 1 year. Fulfill the treaty requirements. Then you're free to go with enough money to never worry again. What requirements? Susan asked, though dread was already pooling in her stomach. The treaty specifies consummation within the first week, Shin said clinically. Physical proof of marriage. An archaic requirement, but the Song clan insists on it. They'll send a physician to verify. If we can't prove the marriage is real in all ways, the treaty breaks. War starts. And your family, he paused, meeting her eyes, becomes leverage the Songs will use against us. Besties, drop a comment right now telling me what you'd do. Stay married to 3 strangers or risk your family. There's no good choice here, and it's about to get so much more complicated. Hit that subscribe button because Susan's about to learn her marriage is only the beginning of the impossible. So my options are to have sex with 3 men I don't know or let my grandmother die and my siblings get torn apart, Susan asked flatly. Those are my options. Yes, all 3 brothers said simultaneously. Susan laughed. It came out broken, jagged, wrong. You know what the really messed up part is? If you'd just offered to help my family in exchange for a year of my time, I probably would have said yes. But you didn't ask. You kidnapped me, forged documents, trapped me, and now you're using my family as hostages. We didn't have time to ask, Day said, pulling the car into an underground garage. The Song clan was accelerating their timeline. If we didn't present a bride by yesterday's treaty deadline, they'd have started killing our people. We had hours to find someone, arrange everything, make it legal enough to satisfy the terms. So you chose me because I was desperate and available, Susan said bitterly. We chose you, Wu said, turning in his seat to face her, because your art showed us your soul. You paint impossible things becoming possible. Worlds colliding and creating something new instead of destroying each other. That's what this marriage is. Impossible. But maybe, possibly, it could become something that doesn't destroy all of us. The car stopped. Shin helped her out, his hand gentle on her elbow. They were in a luxury apartment building, the kind with doormen and marble floors and the scent of money. "Where are we?" Susan asked. "Home," Day said. "Our home. Now yours." The apartment was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Minimalist furniture that probably cost more than cars. Art on the walls, real art, pieces Susan recognized from museums. "The bedroom is through there," Shin said, pointing to a hallway. "Everything you need has been provided. Clothes in your size, toiletries, anything we thought you might want. If we miss something, tell us." "There's a lock on the door," Wu added. "If you need space, take it. We won't enter without permission." "But the consummation requirement," Susan said. "You said within a week." "It's Monday," Day said, checking his watch. "The physician comes Sunday evening. That gives us 6 days. 6 days for you to decide if you can do this. 6 days for us to convince you that maybe this arrangement doesn't have to be as terrible as it seems." "And if I can't?" Susan asked. "If I still can't go through with it on Sunday?" The brothers exchanged glances, something passing between them that Susan couldn't read. "Then we'll figure out another way," Shin said finally. "We're not rapists. We won't force you. But Susan, understand that if the treaty breaks, a lot of people die. Including, probably, us. The songs don't make empty threats. So no pressure," Susan said sarcastically. "Just have sex with 3 strangers or be responsible for mass murder." "We never said this was fair," Wu said quietly. "We said it was necessary. There's a difference." Susan locked herself in the bedroom and immediately called her siblings. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Susan?" "Oh God, Susan, where are you? Grandma's in the hospital and you weren't answering and we thought something happened to you too." "I'm okay," Susan lied, looking at the bloodstain on her collar. "I'm in Seoul. There was a last-minute opportunity. Tell me about Grandma. What happened?" Maya's voice came through, tearful and scared. "She collapsed this morning. Just fell over while making breakfast. The ambulance came, and they said her kidneys are failing and she needs all this treatment and Marcus. He tried to use our insurance, but they said it's not covered and the bills are already at like $50,000 and we don't have that. Susan, we don't have anything." Susan closed her eyes. The brothers hadn't lied about that at least. "Listen to me carefully. Both of you. I've secured funding. All of Grandma's treatment will be covered. Everything. The hospital should receive confirmation within the hour." "What? How?" Marcus demanded. "What did you do?" "I made a deal," Susan said, and that was true enough. "A benefactor offered to sponsor my art in exchange for certain commitments. The money comes with strings, but Grandma gets her treatment, you both get to finish school, and we keep the house. That's what matters." "What kind of strings?" Marcus asked suspiciously. He was too smart, always had been. "The kind I can live with for a year," Susan said. "Trust me, okay? Have I ever let you down?" "No," Maya whispered. "Never. You always save us." The words felt like knives. Saving them was costing her everything, and they didn't even know. "I have to go," Susan said. "But I'll call tomorrow. Take care of each other. Tell Grandma I love her when she wakes up." She hung up before they could ask more questions. The bedroom was beautiful in an impersonal way. Like a hotel suite designed by someone who understood luxury but not warmth. Susan caught her reflection in the floor-length mirror. Still wearing her exhibition dress, now rumpled and blood-stained. Hair that she'd carefully flat-ironed, now wild from being grabbed. Eyes too wide, shocked. She looked like someone who'd stumbled into the wrong story and couldn't find the exit. A knock on the door made her jump. "Susan." Shin's voice. "I brought first aid supplies. Proper ones. May I come in?" She should say no. Should maintain boundaries, keep distance, remember these men had kidnapped her and forced her into marriage. But her neck was still bleeding sluggishly through the makeshift bandage. "Doors unlocked," she said. Shin entered carrying a medical kit that looked military grade. He moved like someone trained in violence, economical and precise. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the bed. When she hesitated, he added, "Please. You might need stitches. I need to see it properly." Susan sat. Shin knelt in front of her, carefully removing the gauze. His fingers were gentle despite their obvious capacity for harm. "You're lucky," he said after a moment. "It's shallow. The blade barely caught you. If Minjun had meant to kill you, you'd be dead." Comforting, Susan said dryly. I try. He cleaned the wound with antiseptic that stung viciously. Susan hissed, but didn't pull away. Why did the Song clan kidnap me? She asked. If the treaty required your family to marry, why would they try to kill me? Because, Shin said, applying butterfly bandages with surprising delicacy, they didn't expect us to actually fulfill the marriage clause. It's been a dead letter for decades. When we presented you as our legal wife this morning, it shocked them, infuriated them. So they tried to eliminate you before the consummation verification could occur. This morning, Susan repeated, you married me yesterday but only told the Song clan today? We needed time to make sure all the paperwork was ironclad, Shin explained. The marriage had to be legally unassailable. We also needed to ensure you were safely in Seoul before announcing it. If the Songs had known about you while you were still in Atlanta, they'd have killed you there. Susan's hands started shaking again. Shin caught them, his grip warm and steady. Hey, look at me. You're safe now. We protect what's ours, and you're ours. Legally, officially, and soon, his eyes darkened, in every other way that matters. I'm not property, Susan said, but her voice lacked conviction. No, Shin agreed. You're family. There's a difference. Property we'd sell if the price was right. Family we'd burn the world down to protect. Besties, can you feel the tension here? The way these brothers are simultaneously threatening and protective? Drop a like if you're as conflicted as Susan right now. And subscribe because I promise you, this story goes places you won't believe. Trust me on this. Shin finished bandaging her neck and stood. There are clothes in the closet. All your size. Showers through that door. Take your time. When you're ready, come eat. You haven't had anything since the exhibition, and shock makes people forget to feed themselves. How do you know my size? Susan asked. We've been watching you for 3 weeks, Shin said matter-of-factly. Learning everything about you. Your schedule, your preferences, your measurements. You think we chose you randomly? We studied you, Susan. We know you take your coffee black with 2 sugars. That you paint between 2 and 5 a.m. when insomnia hits. That you sing old Motown songs when you think no one's listening. That you're afraid of heights, but stand at the edge of rooftops anyway because you like feeling the fear and choosing not to run. Ice flooded Susan's veins. That's stalking. That's due diligence, Shin corrected. We needed to know who we were bringing into our family. Into our war. You're not just a treaty bride, Susan. You're a weapon the Songs will try to use against us. We needed to know if you were strong enough to survive what's coming. And if I wasn't? Then we wouldn't have chosen you, Shin said simply. We'd have found someone else. But you're strong. Your art proves it. You paint nightmares and make them beautiful. That takes a special kind of courage. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. This isn't how anyone should start a marriage. But I'm not sorry you're here. I think you might be exactly what we need. What I need. He left before Susan could respond. She sat on the bed, processing. 3 weeks. They'd been watching her for 3 weeks. Learning her, studying her, planning this. The art prize, the exhibition, the perfect timing with her grandmother's medical crisis, none of it was coincidence. It was orchestration. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But underneath the fear was something else. Something uncomfortable that felt almost like curiosity. These men had seen her art, her real art that most people dismissed as too strange or too dark, and they'd understood it. They'd recognized what she was trying to say about displacement and belonging. They'd looked at her paintings of African masks melting into Korean traditional clothing and seen not just artistic technique but emotional truth. Susan stood, caught her reflection again. This time she didn't see a victim. She saw someone at a crossroads. She could run, refuse, let the consequences fall where they may. Or she could walk forward into this impossible situation and see what happened when worlds that shouldn't touch collided and created something new. She'd been painting that concept for years. Maybe it was time to live it. The shower was rainfall style with water pressure that felt like heaven. Susan stood under it until her skin pruned, washing off blood and fear and the last remnants of her old life. The closet, when she finally opened it, was full of clothes that shouldn't have fit her taste, but somehow did. Comfortable jeans, soft sweaters, dresses that walked the line between elegant and edgy. Whoever had studied her knew her style intimately. She dressed in black jeans and a deep green sweater that made her dark skin glow, then braided her hair into cornrows because she needed the familiar, meditative rhythm of her fingers working. When she emerged, she found all three brothers in the kitchen. They'd changed too, out of blood-splattered clothes into casual wear that made them look almost normal. Almost. Hungry? Day asked. He was cooking something that smelled incredible. Korean food, probably, spices she didn't recognize, but that made her stomach growl. Starving, Susan admitted. Good, Woo said, setting the table. Day's cooking is the one thing all three of us agree on. He's exceptional. They ate in loaded silence. The food was incredible, complex flavors that Susan couldn't identify, but that somehow felt comforting despite their foreignness. Finally, Day spoke. We need to discuss Sunday. The physician. What will happen? Susan set down her chopsticks. I'm listening. The examination is clinical, Shin explained. She checks for physical evidence of consummation. It's invasive and archaic, but the treaty requires it. Both families will have representatives present to witness her findings. Both families? Susan repeated. You mean Song clan members will be there while a doctor examines me for proof I've had sex? Yes, all three brothers confirmed. Susan laughed, but there was no humor in it. This is medieval. You understand that, right? This is literally medieval. Our families are bound by medieval oaths, Wu said. Blood debts going back 70 years. When our grandfather killed the Song patriarch's son, the only thing that prevented total annihilation was a treaty sealed with marriage requirements. Every generation has to fulfill it, or the blood debt reactivates. So I'm not the first, Susan said. No, Day confirmed. But you're the first in our generation. And the first African bride. The Song clan is furious about that specifically. They consider it an insult that we didn't choose a Korean woman. Racist and medieval, Susan said. Fantastic combination. Which is why they'll scrutinize the verification closely, Shin said. They're looking for any excuse to invalidate the marriage. The examination has to show clear evidence. Undeniable proof. Susan's appetite vanished. And if I can't go through with it? If Sunday comes and I still can't? The brothers exchanged looks again, that wordless communication that suggested years of shared understanding. Then we'll face the consequences together, Day said finally. But Susan, you should know something. The Songs won't just start a war. They'll start with you. You're the treaty violation. You're the target. If we can't prove the marriage, they'll kill you first. Slowly. Publicly. As an example. Jesus, Susan breathed. We're not trying to scare you, Wu said, though his expression suggested otherwise. We're trying to make sure you understand the stakes. This isn't just about discomfort or unfamiliarity. This is life and death. Yours, ours, dozens of others. Besties, I know this is heavy. I know Susan's in an impossible situation. But stay with me because what happens next changes everything. Comment below if you think she should run or stay. And hit that subscribe button because tomorrow in this story brings a revelation that flips the entire situation. Susan stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need air. I need to think. I need to not be in this apartment with you three watching me like I'm a problem you're trying to solve. You can't leave, Day said immediately. The Songs have people everywhere. The moment you step outside alone, you're a target. Then come with me, Susan snapped. All three of you, one of you, I don't care. But I need to move or I'm going to lose my mind. Wu stood. I'll take her. You two handle the security updates. Wu, Shin said, a warning in his voice. I know, Wu replied. I'll keep her safe. 5 minutes later, Susan was in another car with Wu driving through Seoul's night streets. The city was beautiful, neon and shadow, ancient temples next to modern skyscrapers. A city living between worlds, just like her paintings. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere you can breathe, Wu said. Somewhere the Songs won't look because it's too public, too exposed. Sometimes the safest place to hide is in plain sight. They ended up at N Seoul Tower, the observation deck crowded with tourists and couples. Wu kept close, his hand occasionally touching her lower back, guiding her through the crowd. Protective but not possessive. They found a spot at the railing overlooking the city. Susan gripped the metal, feeling the height, the fear, choosing not to run from it. You're afraid of heights, Wu observed. Shin told you that, Susan said. He told you everything from your stalker research. It wasn't stalking, Wu said mildly. It was reconnaissance. There's a difference. Is there? Susan challenged. Because from where I'm standing, 3 men secretly watching me for weeks, learning my habits, manipulating me into marriage feels a lot like stalking. You're right, Wu said, surprising her. It was a violation. A necessary one given our circumstances, but still a violation. If I could have approached you honestly, explained the situation, asked for your help instead of trapping you, I would have. But you'd have said no. You don't know that, Susan protested. Don't I? Wu turned to face her fully. If 3 Korean men you'd never met approached you in Atlanta and said, marry us to prevent a gang war, also you have to sleep with all of us and get examined by a doctor to prove it, you'd have called the police. Rightfully. There was no version of honesty that resulted in your cooperation. Susan wanted to argue but couldn't. He was right. So you just decided my consent didn't matter? Your informed consent mattered more, Wu said. That's why we're having this conversation now. That's why we're giving you 6 days instead of forcing you immediately. We need you to choose this understanding everything, not because we tricked you, but because you've weighed all options and decided this is the least terrible choice. That's not really a choice, Susan said bitterly. No, Wu agreed. But it's the only one we can offer. They stood in silence, watching Seoul breathe below them. Finally, Susan spoke. Tell me about the Song clan. Why do they hate your family so much that they'd kill me just to break a treaty? Wu was quiet for a long moment. Then he started talking. 70 years ago, during the Korean War, both families were nothing. Poor, desperate, trying to survive. Our grandfather, Kang Daejung, and the Song patriarch, Song Minho, they were best friends. Brothers in everything but blood. They built the first criminal empire together. Protection money, black market supplies, whatever kept their families fed during the war. What happened? Susan asked. Love, Wu said simply. A woman named Park Ji-yeon. Beautiful, intelligent, caught between 2 men who both wanted her. She chose our grandfather. Song Minho felt betrayed, but he accepted it. They were brothers. Brothers don't let women destroy them. But something did destroy them, Susan guessed. Ji-yeon got pregnant, Wu continued. Our father. But rumors started that the child wasn't Daejung's. That Ji-yeon had been with Minho first. That she'd only married Daejung because he had more money, more prospects. The rumors drove Daejung mad with jealousy. He confronted Minho's son, a boy barely 20, and demanded a paternity test. Wu's hands clenched on the railing. The son laughed at him. Said whether the child was Kang or Song blood didn't matter because Ji-yeon had chosen Daejung. But Daejung's pride was destroyed. So he killed the boy. Shot him in the street like a dog. Susan's breath caught. Over rumors? Over paternity questions? Over honor, Wu corrected. In our world, honor and face are everything. Daejung felt humiliated, cuckolded, laughed at. So he eliminated the source of his shame. But killing Minho's only son started a war that claimed hundreds of lives over 10 years. Finally, the old men met one last time. They made a treaty. The kings would provide brides to the Songs every generation. Mix blood to heal the split. If the marriages occurred, peace held. If they didn't, the blood debt reactivated. That's insane, Susan said. That's tradition, Wu replied. And in our world, tradition written in blood is law. But I'm not Korean, Susan pointed out. How does an African bride fulfill a treaty about healing Korean family splits? Wu smiled, and for the first time it looked genuine. That's exactly why Dae chose you. The treaty says bride, but doesn't specify ethnicity. The Songs assumed Korean, but the actual language is ambiguous. By choosing you, Dae insults them while technically fulfilling the requirement. It's brilliant and reckless in equal measure. So I'm a loophole and a middle finger, Susan said. Wonderful. You're more than that, Wu said quietly. At least to me. Susan looked at him sharply. Don't what? Don't pretend this is romance, Susan said. Don't act like you actually care about me beyond what I represent. You studied me like a specimen. You chose me because I was desperate and available and fit your requirements. That's not care. That's strategy. Can it be both? Wu asked. Can I have chosen you strategically and then looked at your paintings and felt something shift inside me? Can I have learned your habits clinically and then found myself charmed by the way you sing off-key at 3 a.m.? Can this start as strategy and become something real? Besties, hit that subscribe button right now because what Wu says next is going to change how you see this entire situation. Comment if you think he's being genuine or manipulative. I need to know what you're feeling right now. Stay with me. I don't know you, Susan whispered. You don't know me. Not really. You know facts about me. You don't know what it's like inside my head, inside my heart. Then tell me, Wu said. We have 6 days before Sunday. Tell me you are beyond the facts. Let me know you the way you deserve to be known. Not as a treaty requirement. As a person. Susan wanted to refuse, to maintain walls, to remember these men had trapped her. But standing here overlooking a foreign city, talking to a beautiful, dangerous man who looked at her like she was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve, she felt something crack inside her. My parents died when I was 7, she heard herself say. Car accident. Black ice, wrong place, wrong time. I was in the car too. Backseat. I watched them die and couldn't do anything. Just sat there screaming while their blood spread across the dashboard. Wu's hand found hers on the railing. She didn't pull away. My grandmother took us in. Me, Marcus, Maya. 3 traumatized kids with no money and no future. She was a cafeteria worker, barely making ends meet, but she fed us, clothed us, loved us. She taught me that family means you show up. You sacrifice. You do whatever it takes to keep your people safe. That's why you paint displacement, Wu said softly. Because you lost your first home and spent your life trying to build a new one. I paint it because I've never belonged anywhere, Susan corrected. Too black for the white schools. Too poor for the black middle-class kids. Too artsy for the hood. Too hood for the galleries. I exist in the spaces between things, never fully landing. I understand that, Wu said. Being a criminal in a legitimate world. Korean but raised with Western values. Triplet but individual. I've spent my life in the between spaces too. Susan looked at him, really looked. Saw past the beautiful face and dangerous grace to something lonely underneath. Is that why you do this? The crime, the violence? Because it's the only place you fit. I do it because it's the family business, Wu said. But I stay because I'm good at it. I'm good at reading people, anticipating moves, finding the quiet spaces where solutions hide. My brothers are force. I'm finesse. Together we balance. And where do I fit in that balance? Susan asked. You're the wild card, Wu admitted. The element we can't fully predict or control. That terrifies Dae because he needs control. It frustrates Shin because he can't analyze you completely. But me? I think unpredictability might be exactly what we need. They stood together, hands touching, watching the city breathe. Finally, Susan spoke. I can't promise I'll go through with Sunday. I can't promise I won't run. But I'll stay for tonight. I'll listen to what you have to say. I'll try to understand this impossible situation. That's all I can offer. That's enough, Wu said. For now, that's enough. They drove back in comfortable silence. When they arrived at the apartment, Shin was waiting. We have a problem, he said immediately. The songs moved up the timeline. The physician comes Friday, not Sunday. That gives us 4 days instead of 6. Susan's stomach dropped. Why? Because they know you're scared, Shin said bluntly. They're betting you'll break under pressure. That you won't be ready. That will fail the verification and void the treaty. Can they do that? Susan demanded. Just change the terms? They can negotiate, Dae said, emerging from his office. And we can't refuse without looking like we're stalling. Like we don't have confidence in our marriage. He looked at Susan, his expression unreadable. Friday at 8 p.m. The examination happens whether you're ready or not. Then I guess, Susan said, hearing her voice shake, you have 4 days to convince me. Better make them count. Susan didn't sleep that night. She lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, counting down the hours until Friday. 96 hours. 4 days. That's all the time she had to decide if she could let 3 strangers touch her, claim her, consummate a marriage she'd never agreed to. The door opened quietly around 3 a.m. Susan sat up, reaching for the lamp. Don't. Shin's voice came from the darkness. The light will make this harder. Make what harder? Susan asked, her heart racing. Honesty, Shin said. She heard him move closer, but he didn't approach the bed. Instead, he settled on the floor, his back against the wall. I can't sleep either. Haven't slept properly in weeks, actually. Not since we decided you were the one. Guilty conscience? Susan asked. Something like that, Shin admitted. Can I tell you something? Something I haven't told my brothers. Susan should say no. She should maintain boundaries. But darkness made people honest, and she needed honesty more than safety right now. Okay. I don't want to do this, Shin said quietly. The examination, the forced intimacy, any of it. It makes me sick. My mother was forced into marriage with our father. Treaty bride from a different family conflict. She was 17. Terrified. And my father, he fulfilled his obligations without caring about her fear, her pain, her humanity. I watched her break over years. Watched her become a ghost. When she finally died, I think part of her was relieved. Susan's breath caught. Shin. I swore I'd never do that to another woman, he continued, his voice rough. Never force, never coerce, never make someone feel trapped the way my mother felt trapped. And now here I am, part of a plan that's doing exactly that to you. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so goddamn tragic. Then why are you doing it? Susan asked. Why not refuse? Find another way. Because there is no other way, Shin said. I've run every scenario, every possibility. This is the only solution that keeps everyone alive. The songs, us, you, your family, the dozens of people caught in the crossfire if war starts. Sometimes there are no good choices. Only less terrible ones. Susan slid out of bed, moved to sit on the floor beside him. Not touching, just close. Tell me about your mother. Shin was quiet for so long Susan thought he wouldn't answer. Then he started talking. Her name was Yoon-mi-sun. She was beautiful. Not just physically, though she was that too. Beautiful in her soul. She loved poetry, music, gardens. She would have been an artist if she'd been allowed to choose her life. Instead, she became a treaty bride. A political solution. A womb for the next generation. His voice cracked. She had us, 3 boys in 1 pregnancy. It nearly killed her. The doctors said no more children, but my father didn't care. He wanted a daughter. Kept trying. She miscarried 4 times. Each one broke her a little more. By the time I was 10, she barely spoke. Just moved through the house like a ghost, tending her garden, humming songs we couldn't hear. How did she die? Susan asked gently. Officially? Heart failure, Shin said. Actually? She walked into her garden one morning, took poison she'd been cultivating for months, and lay down among her roses. I found her. I was 15. She looked peaceful for the first time in years. Tears were running down Susan's face. I'm so sorry. I tell you this, Shin said, finally turning to look at her, because I need you to understand. I will never force you. If Friday comes and you can't do it, I'll stand between you and my brothers. I'll take the consequences. I'll protect you the way I couldn't protect my mother. That's my promise, Susan. You're not alone in this. Susan reached for his hand. He gripped it like a lifeline. They sat together in the darkness, 2 people trapped by circumstances beyond their control, finding unexpected solidarity. Why are you the one with the scar? Susan asked after a while. You said you studied me. I'm studying you. That scar isn't old. It's maybe 2 years healed. Someone cut you deliberately. Shin touched his eyebrow reflexively. Sharp eyes. The Song clan did it. 2 years ago, we tried to negotiate peace without the marriage requirement. Offered money, territory, business partnerships. They refused. Said the blood debt could only be paid in blood or marriage. When we kept pushing, they sent a message. He pulled up his shirt. Even in the darkness, Susan could see the scars crossing his torso. They took me. Held me for 3 days. Cut me systematically. Nothing fatal, nothing permanently damaging. Just pain. Demonstrating what they'd do to all of us if we didn't fulfill the treaty. Jesus, Susan breathed. That's why Day is so rigid about following the terms exactly, Shin continued. Why was studies every angle looking for leverage? They've seen what the songs do to people who defy them. They're terrified it'll happen again. Terrified it'll happen to you. Besties, I need you to understand something. This story isn't just about romance. It's about trauma, survival, impossible choices. If you're feeling this, if Shin's confession hit you, drop a comment. Tell me if you think Susan should trust him. And subscribe because what happens tomorrow in this story breaks everything open. Morning came too fast. Susan woke still on the floor, her head on Shin's shoulder. He was asleep, his face younger in repose, peaceful. She studied him, this dangerous man who'd confessed his deepest pain to a stranger in the dark. Her neck where the knife had cut her was healing already, just a thin red line. By Friday, it would probably be invisible. Just like she was supposed to make her fear invisible. Her resistance invisible. Her whole self invisible except for the parts that fulfilled the treaty. Susan stood carefully, not waking Shin. She needed to move, to think, to paint. Painting was how she processed impossible things. She found Day in the kitchen, already awake despite the early hour. He looked tired, older than his years. Coffee, he offered. Please. They stood in awkward silence while the machine worked. Finally, Day spoke. Shin told you about our mother. It wasn't a question. How did you know? Because you're looking at me differently, Day said. Less like I'm a villain and more like I'm a person making terrible choices for complicated reasons. Are you? Susan asked. A person making terrible choices? Yes, Day said simply. Every day. Every choice I make costs someone something. I chose to trap you into this marriage and it cost you your freedom. But if I hadn't, the alternative cost dozens of lives. So I made the choice I could live with. Barely. He handed her coffee, their fingers brushing. My mother's death destroyed us. All three of us, but especially me. I was the oldest. I should have protected her. Should have seen the signs, the way she was breaking. Instead, I was too busy learning the family business, trying to impress our father, ignoring that the woman who gave birth to me was dying right in front of me. You were a child, Susan said. You were 15, Day corrected. Old enough to know better. Old enough to do something. I failed her. I won't fail you. Whatever happens Friday, whatever you decide, I need you to know that you matter. Not as a treaty requirement. As a person. As someone who deserves choice even when circumstances make choice nearly impossible. Susan sipped her coffee, studying this man who carried so much weight. You're all broken, aren't you? You three. Broken by your mother's death, by this life, by expectations you can't escape. Completely shattered, Day agreed. We just hide it well. I can't fix you, Susan said. I can barely fix myself. If you're hoping I'll somehow heal whatever's broken in you, you're going to be disappointed. I'm not asking you to fix us, Day said. I'm asking you to survive us. To stay whole while we try not to break you the way our father broke our mother. That's all. Just survive us. Before Susan could respond, her phone rang. Marcus. She answered immediately. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Marcus said, confusion in his voice. Everything's right. Grandma woke up this morning completely stable. The doctors are calling it a miracle. They said someone paid for experimental treatment, some new therapy that's not even available in the US yet. They flew in a specialist from Switzerland. Susan, whoever your benefactor is, they're saving her life. Susan looked at Day, who was watching her with unreadable eyes. That's amazing, Marcus. I'm so glad. There's more, Marcus continued. Maya and I both got acceptance letters today. Full scholarships to Emory. Everything covered, tuition, housing, books, everything. And there was a check, Susan. A check for $100,000 made out to you. The note said it's a signing bonus for your art sponsorship. What kind of sponsorship comes with this kind of money? The kind that requires certain commitments, Susan said, still looking at Day. I have to go, Marcus. Give Grandma my love. She hung up. The experimental treatment, she said to Day. That was you. That was us, Day corrected. All three of us. We made a deal, Susan. We're honoring our part. Regardless of what happens Friday, your family is protected. The money is yours. That doesn't change. Why? Susan asked. Why fulfill your part before I fulfill mine? Because, Day said quietly, you need to know we're not monsters. We're men trapped in a monstrous situation, trying to do right by you in the only ways we know how. Money, protection, healthcare, those are the languages we speak. Let us speak them for you. Susan felt something shift inside her. Not love, not even trust, but recognition. These men were as trapped as she was. They just had different bars on their cages. For days, she said. You have 4 days to show me you're not your father. That you won't break me the way he broke your mother. If you can do that, if you can make me believe you see me as a person and not a treaty requirement, then maybe, possibly, I can do what needs to be done Friday. For days, Day agreed. We won't waste them. Wu appeared in the doorway, already dressed despite the early hour. We have a situation. The Songs are demanding a meeting. Today, they want to see Susan, verify she's real, that the marriage is legitimate before Friday's examination. Absolutely not, Shin said, entering behind Wu. He'd showered, changed, his eyes alert despite their early morning conversation. She's not ready for that kind of exposure. We don't have a choice, Wu said. If we refuse, they'll claim we're hiding something. That the marriage is fake. They'll use it as justification to void the treaty. Then what do they want? Susan asked. What kind of meeting? Dinner, Wu said, and something in his tone made Susan's blood run cold. Tonight. Formal. At the Song family compound. You, us, the Song brothers, their parents, and about 30 of their closest associates. All watching you. Judging you. Looking for any weakness they can exploit. Besties, comment right now if you think Susan should go to this dinner or refuse. This is where everything gets dangerous. Hit that subscribe button because what happens at the Song compound changes the entire game. Susan stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress was traditional Korean hanbok, but modified, modernized. Deep purple silk that made her dark skin luminous, gold embroidery that caught the light. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, her makeup subtle but perfect. She looked like someone who belonged in this world of crime and ancient blood debts. She hated how good that felt. You're beautiful, Shin said from the doorway. All three brothers wore matching black suits, traditional but tailored. They looked like what they were, dangerous men barely contained by expensive clothing. I look like a doll you've dressed up, Susan said. A prop for your performance. You look like our wife, Day corrected, entering behind Shin. There's a difference. The Songs need to believe this marriage is real. That means we need to believe it first. How do we do that? Susan asked. How do we make a fake marriage look real in front of people trained to spot deception? Wu moved to stand beside her at the mirror. We tell the truth. Just not all of it. We're married, that's true. We're attracted to you, also true. We want this to work, true again. We just omit the parts about coercion and contracts and desperation. Lies of omission are still lies, Susan said. Welcome to our world, Wu replied. Where truth is whatever serves survival. The Song family compound was in Gangnam, behind walls that looked designed to keep out armies. Guards everywhere, cameras, dogs. They drove through gates that closed behind them with the finality of a prison door. Stay close to us, Day instructed as they walked toward the main house. Don't speak unless directly addressed. Don't make eye contact with Song Taeyang. He's the eldest brother and he'll try to intimidate you. If anyone touches you inappropriately, tell me immediately. Inappropriately how? Susan asked. Any way that makes you uncomfortable, Shin said. These men will test boundaries. They'll try to provoke us through you. Don't let them. The dining room was massive, traditional Korean with low tables and floor seating. 30 people, just like Wu had said, all watching as Susan entered. The silence was suffocating. So this is the African bride, a voice said in perfect English. A man stood tall, handsome in a cruel way. Song Taeyang, Susan guessed. I must say, Kong Dae, when you said you'd fulfilled the treaty requirement, I expected someone more traditional. The treaty specifies bride, not ethnicity, Dae said calmly. Susan fulfills all requirements. Does she speak? Another man, younger, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Or did you choose someone who couldn't talk back? I speak, Susan said, lifting her chin. I also hear. And what I'm hearing is a lot of disrespect for a treaty you claim to honor. The room went deadly silent. Shin's hand found her back, a warning, but Susan didn't back down. Taeyang laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. She is spine. I'll give you that. But spine won't help her Friday when the physician confirms what we all suspect, that this marriage is a sham. Then you'll be disappointed, Susan said, because this marriage is very real. Or do you not believe in legal documents? I thought honor and tradition mattered in your world. Sit, an elderly woman commanded from the head table. Everyone sit. Let's eat before the children start a war in my dining room. They sat. Susan between Day and Shin, Wu across from her. The meal was elaborate, course after course of food Susan couldn't identify. She ate carefully, aware that everyone was watching every move. "Tell me, Susan," the elderly woman said. "How did you meet my son's rivals? What's the story you'll tell when people ask about your whirlwind romance?" "Besties, this is where it gets real." Susan has to lie in front of 30 people trained to spot deception. Can she pull it off? Comment below if you think she's going to crack under pressure. And hit that subscribe button because what she says next is absolutely brilliant. Susan met the woman's eyes. Song matriarch, probably. The real power in the room. "I met them through my art," Susan said, and that was true enough. They saw my exhibition, saw how I painted cultural displacement, the feeling of belonging nowhere fully. They understood it because they feel it too. Korean but raised with Western influences. Criminal but bound by honor. Traditional but living in modern times. We bonded over being caught between worlds. Poetic, Taeyong said mockingly. But bonding doesn't explain marriage. Doesn't explain 3 men sharing 1 woman. That's not love, that's possession. Is it? Susan challenged. Or is it 3 people finding completeness in combination instead of isolation? You assume marriage must follow traditional patterns. 1 man, 1 woman, conventional romance. But my entire life has been unconventional. Why would my marriage be any different? Because it's not real, Taeyong said flatly. You were bought. Paid for. A contract bride to satisfy a treaty you don't understand. Susan felt Day tense beside her. This was the moment. Confirm or deny. Tell truth or commit to the lie. You're right, she said, and the room gasped. I was bought. My family was drowning in medical debt, poverty, desperation. The Kangs offered money in exchange for marriage. I took it. But here's what you don't understand. She stood, forcing them to look up at her. Being bought doesn't mean I'm not choosing to stay. It means I understand transaction, value, exchange. You think that makes this marriage less real? I think it makes it more honest than most. How many people marry for love only to discover they've bought a lie? At least I know exactly what this is. A bargain I'm choosing to honor. The matriarch smiled. Clever girl. You admit the contract, but frame it as empowerment. Nice strategy. It's not strategy, Susan said. It's truth. I'm not pretending this is a fairy tale. It's a business arrangement that might become something more. Or might not. Either way, Friday's examination will confirm consummation because I choose to fulfill my obligations. Not because they forced me. Because I decided my family's survival is worth the price. And what happens after the year? Another song asked. When the contract ends and you take your money and leave. The treaty requires ongoing marriage, not temporary arrangements. Susan looked at Day, Shin, Wu. 3 men watching her with identical expressions of surprise and something else. Hope, maybe. Who says I'm leaving? She asked. Maybe a year with 3 men who see me, understand my art, protect my family. Maybe that's worth more than the money. Maybe I'll surprise everyone, including myself, and choose to stay. The silence was absolute. Then the matriarch laughed, genuine and warm. Oh, I like her. She's smart, this one. Smarter than you deserve, Kong Day. I know, Day said quietly, his eyes never leaving Susan. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. More food, polite conversation covering threats, smiles hiding hatred. Susan played her part perfectly. Attentive wife, curious newcomer, woman who'd made a calculated choice and was owning it. Finally, it was over. They were back in the car, driving away from the compound. Susan's hands were shaking from adrenaline. That was incredible, Wu said, turning to look at her. The way you flipped the narrative, admitted the truth but reframed it as your power, your choice. That was masterful. I just told the truth, Susan said. Isn't that what you told me to do? We told you to tell partial truth, Shin corrected. You told complete truth in a way that made them respect you instead of pity you. That's a skill most people spend years learning. You did it instinctively. Did you mean it? Day asked quietly. What you said about choosing to stay. About the year potentially becoming more. Susan looked at him. I don't know. But I meant that I'm choosing to be here right now. That I'm choosing to see this through. Beyond that, I can't promise anything. That's fair, Day said. That's more than fair. They arrived back at the apartment. Susan was exhausted, drained from the performance, the tension, the constant awareness of being watched and judged. Susan, Wu called as she headed toward her bedroom. Thank you. For tonight. For standing with us. For making them believe. I wasn't doing it for you, Susan said. I was doing it for me. For my family. For the life I'm trying to protect. I know, Wu said. That's what made it so convincing. Susan locked her bedroom door, stripped off the beautiful hanbok, scrubbed off the makeup, stood under hot water until her skin was red and her thoughts were clearer. 3 days until Friday. 3 days until the examination. 3 days to decide if she could actually go through with what she just promised in front of 30 people. She dried off, pulled on comfortable pajamas, and was reaching for her phone to call her grandmother when she heard it. Shouting. In Korean. Angry, violent. Susan cracked her door open. The shouting was coming from Dae's office. All 3 brothers, arguing in rapid-fire Korean she couldn't understand. But she understood tone. They were fighting about something serious. The door slammed open. Shin stormed out, saw Susan watching. Go back to bed. This doesn't concern you. What's happening? Susan asked. Family business, Shin said coldly. Not your problem. But Wu emerged behind him, his expression dark. She should know. It concerns her. Wu, no, Dae commanded from inside the office. She deserves to know what she's walking into, Wu insisted. He turned to Susan. The examination on Friday. The physician. She's Song Clan. Their choice, not a neutral party like the treaty specifies. They're trying to rig the verification. Susan's blood went cold. Rig it how? By having their doctor declare the examination inconclusive or suspicious regardless of actual findings, Shin explained, his anger fading to resignation. They're setting up to void the treaty no matter what we do. Friday was never about verification. It's about manufacturing an excuse for war. So all of this was pointless? Susan asked. The marriage, the dinner tonight, everything? They were always planning to break the treaty? We don't know that for certain, Dae said, appearing in the doorway. But we have intelligence suggesting that's their play. Which means we need a contingency plan. What kind of plan? Susan asked, dread pooling in her stomach. The brothers exchanged looks. Then Dae spoke, his voice heavy with something Susan couldn't identify. The kind where you disappear before Friday. We get you out of Seoul, back to Atlanta, with enough money and protection that the songs can never touch you or your family. The treaty breaks, war starts, but you're safe. That's what matters. Besties, hit that subscribe button right now because what Susan decides next changes everything. Should she run and save herself? Or stay and risk whatever the songs have planned? Comment your choice below. This is the moment the entire story has been building toward. No. The single word hung in the air like a gunshot. Susan, Shin started, but she cut him off. I said no. I'm not running. You don't understand what you're refusing, Dae said, his voice tight with frustration. If the examination is rigged, if they declare the marriage invalid regardless of truth, you become a target. Not just for killing. For punishment. They'll make an example of you that's so brutal, so public, that no one will ever question song authority again. I understand perfectly, Susan said, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. I understand that you're offering me an escape that saves my life, but destroys everything I just promised in that dining room. I stood in front of 30 people and told them I choose this. That I'm not a victim. That I'm making a calculated decision to honor my obligations. If I run now, I'm a liar. And I'm not a liar. Better a liar than dead, Wu said flatly. Is it? Susan challenged. Because from where I'm standing, running makes me exactly what they said I was. A contract bride who never intended to fulfill the terms. A fake marriage. A coward who talks big but runs when things get hard. Is that who you want me to be? We want you alive, all 3 brothers said simultaneously. Then make sure I stay that way, Susan said. You're telling me the examination is rigged? Fine. Rig it back. You're MAFIA, right? Crime lords, power brokers, whatever you call yourselves. So use that power. Find leverage on the physician. Blackmail her, bribe her, threaten her family, I don't care how you do it. But make sure Friday's examination shows exactly what it should show. That I'm your wife in every way that matters. Shin was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. You're seriously suggesting we coerce a doctor? I'm suggesting you fight fire with fire, Susan said. The songs are playing dirty. Play dirtier. Or are you telling me you're criminals with a conscience when it comes to medical professionals? We don't hurt innocent people, Day said carefully. That's a line we don't cross. Then don't hurt her, Susan said. Convince her. Offer her something she wants more than song approval. Everyone has a price. You found mine. Find hers. Wu started laughing. Not his usual controlled amusement, but genuine surprised laughter. She's right. My God, she's absolutely right. We've been so focused on playing by their rules that we forgot we make our own rules. The physician's name is Dr. Park Soo-jin, Shin said slowly, pulling out his phone. Widowed 5 years ago. One daughter, studying medicine in the U.S. Visa complications because of criminal associations in her background. There's your leverage, Susan said immediately. Fix the visa problems. Guarantee the daughter's safety and education. In exchange, Dr. Park reports exactly what we need her to report. That's not coercion, Day said, understanding dawning in his eyes. That's exchange. Value for value. That's business, Susan corrected. The language you said you speak. So speak it. Day moved so fast Susan barely saw him coming. One moment he was across the room, the next his hands were framing her face, his eyes burning into hers. Who are you? Really? Because the desperate art student we researched wouldn't have thought like this. Wouldn't have suggested blackmail and leverage like it was normal Tuesday business. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think, Susan said, meeting his intensity with her own. Maybe desperate doesn't mean weak. Maybe I've been surviving impossible situations my whole life and you just gave me tools I never had access to before. Money, power, connections. Why wouldn't I use them? You're dangerous, Day breathed. More dangerous than we realized. Good, Susan said. Because I'm going to need to be dangerous to survive what's coming. Now stop staring at me and go fix this situation. Day kissed her. Hard, possessive, claiming. Susan gasped against his mouth, then kissed him back with equal intensity. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathing hard. Friday, he said roughly. You're sure about Friday? About all of it. Handle the physician, Susan said instead of answering directly. Then we'll talk about Friday. Besties, can you believe what just happened? Susan went from victim to player in one conversation. If you're feeling this power shift, smash that like button. Comment if you think she's making the right choice or walking into a trap. And subscribe because the next 48 hours are going to be absolutely insane. The next 2 days were a blur of activity. Susan barely saw the brothers. They were handling the Dr. Park situation, as Wu euphemistically called it. But she felt their presence. Felt the apartment humming with purpose and planning. She spent the time painting. Not her usual surrealist nightmares, but something new. 3 figures, identical but distinct, surrounded by roses that bled into knives. Beauty and danger combined. She didn't know what it meant, only that she needed to create it. Thursday evening, Shin found her in the makeshift studio they'd set up in a spare room. It's done, he said without preamble. Dr. Park's daughter's visa is fixed. Full scholarship to Johns Hopkins. Housing secured. Criminal associations erased from her record. In exchange, Dr. Park will conduct the examination exactly as it should be conducted. Honestly, thoroughly, and she'll report findings based on evidence, not song pressure. So if there's evidence of consummation, she'll confirm it, Susan said. Yes. And if there isn't? Shin met her eyes. Then she'll report that honestly too. We bought her integrity, not her lies. She'll do her job properly. That's all we can ask. Susan set down her brush. That's actually more ethical than I expected. We're criminals with standards, Shin said dryly. Shocking, I know. He moved closer, studying her painting. This is us. I know. You see us as dangerous. You're dangerous, Susan said. But so are roses. Beautiful, fragrant, desired. Also thorns that draw blood. Why can't you be both? Shin touched the canvas gently, his finger tracing one of the knife roses. My mother painted. Did I tell you that? Gardens, flowers, beauty she couldn't find in her life. Your style is completely different, but the need, the compulsion to create despite everything, that's the same. She would have liked you. Would she have liked what you're asking me to do tomorrow? Susan asked quietly. Shin flinched. No. She'd have hated it. Hated us for putting you in this position. But she'd have understood why. She lived this life. Knew the cost of defying blood oaths. She just paid too much for understanding. I won't, Susan said firmly. I won't break the way she broke. I'm choosing this, Shin. Not because you're forcing me. Because I've weighed the costs and decided this is the price I'm willing to pay. That makes all the difference. Does it? Shin asked. Because from where I'm standing, choice under duress isn't really choice at all. Then maybe, Susan said, standing to face him fully, we need to change what tomorrow means. Stop thinking about it as obligation and start thinking about it as something else. Like what? Like possibility, Susan said. Like 3 people deciding to trust each other with their most vulnerable selves. Like intimacy that's real instead of performed. Like maybe, just maybe, we stop pretending this is only about treaties and start acknowledging that there's something else happening here. Shin's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm attracted to you, Susan admitted. Today, to Wu, to all 3 of you in different ways. I'm saying that terrifies me, but it's also true. I'm saying that maybe tomorrow doesn't have to be a sacrifice. Maybe it could be something we all choose. Together. Susan, Shin whispered, moving closer. If you're offering what I think you're offering, you need to be absolutely sure. Because once we cross that line, there's no going back. You'll be ours, and we'll be yours in ways that transcend any treaty. I know, Susan said. That's what I'm counting on. Shin kissed her differently than they had. Softer, more tentative, like he was afraid she'd break. Susan pressed closer, showing him she wouldn't shatter. When they finally broke apart, Shin rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow night, after the examination. If you still feel this way, if this is still what you want, we'll make it about us. Not the treaty. Not the songs. Just us choosing each other. Tomorrow night, Susan agreed. But tomorrow came with unexpected complications. Susan woke to shouting again. She pulled on a robe and emerged to find all 3 brothers in the living room with their grandmother. The ancient woman from the wedding ceremony, looking furious and animated despite her age. I don't care what the songs are planning, she was saying in heavily accented English, clearly for Susan's benefit. This examination is an insult. No granddaughter-in-law of mine will be subjected to such humiliation. Grandmother, we've been over this, Day said wearily. The treaty requires it. Then the treaty is barbaric and should be burned, the old woman snapped. She noticed Susan and her expression softened marginally. You, girl, come here. Susan approached cautiously. The grandmother grabbed her hand with surprising strength, studying the jade bracelet she still wore. You kept it, she said, satisfaction in her voice. Good. Do you know what this bracelet means? Family legacy, Susan said, remembering. 6 generations of Kong wives. It means protection, the grandmother corrected. Any woman wearing this bracelet is under my personal protection. Which means the songs cannot touch you without declaring war on me personally. And I am old, cranky, and have more blackmail material on every major family in Seoul than the National Intelligence Service. They won't risk angering me. What are you saying? Wu asked carefully. I'm saying the examination doesn't happen, grandmother declared. Not the way the songs want it. My personal physician will conduct it. In my home. With only family present. The songs can accept those terms or they can try to challenge me. See how that works out for them. They'll never agree, Shin said. They've been planning this for weeks. Then let them refuse, grandmother said with a sharp smile. And explain to the entire criminal network why they're disrespecting an elder over proper protocol. See how much support they maintain when I start spreading word that Song Taeyong frequents certain clubs in Itaewon. Clubs where age verification is questionable at best. You wouldn't, Day breathed. I absolutely would, grandmother said. I've been playing this game since before any of you were born. The songs think they can manipulate the situation? Let me show them what real manipulation looks like. Besties, grandmother just entered the game, and she's playing on a completely different level. Hit that subscribe button because what happens in the next 24 hours is going to blow your mind. Comment if you think grandmother is Susan's salvation or if this makes things worse. The phone call came an hour later. Song matriarch to Kong matriarch. Susan couldn't understand the Korean, but she understood tone. Negotiation, threat, counter-threat, and finally grudging agreement. It's done, grandmother announced, hanging up. The examination happens at my estate tomorrow evening. My physician, Dr. Kim, she's neutral and has been with my family for 40 years. Family representatives only, no song observers. Dr. Kim reports her findings to both matriarchs privately, then we jointly announce to the families. The Songs agreed because refusing would have cost them more than conceding. How did you do that? Susan asked in awe. Power isn't about force, child, grandmother said. It's about knowing what people value and making them choose between that and their pride. Song matriarch values her family's reputation more than this particular power play. I made it clear that fighting me would damage that reputation irreparably. She chose wisely. Grandmother stood, leaning on her cane. Now, the examination is tomorrow at 7 p.m. You have 24 hours. I suggest you spend them preparing. Not just physically. Emotionally. What happens tomorrow will be uncomfortable regardless of who conducts it. Make sure you're ready. She moved toward the door, then paused. And grandsons? Make sure you're worthy of her. This girl has steel in her spine. Don't waste that strength on your trauma and stupidity. Heal each other or let her go. Those are your only options. She left, leaving stunning silence behind. Did your grandmother just give us relationship advice? Susan asked incredulously. Relationship commands, Wu corrected. She doesn't advise. She mandates. She's right though, Day said quietly. We've been so focused on the treaty, the songs, survival that we haven't thought about what happens after. If we actually make this marriage real, if we claim you and you claim us, what does that life look like? Complicated, Susan said honestly. Probably messy. Definitely unconventional. But maybe, possibly, worth it. If we're all choosing it. Then tomorrow, Shin said, we choose. All of us. Together. The 24 hours before the examination moved in strange time. Too fast and too slow simultaneously. Susan couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything except the clock ticking towards 7 p.m. The brothers gave her space, but stayed close. She'd find Day working in his office with the door open so he could see her. Shin would appear with tea she didn't ask for but needed. Wu sat in comfortable silence while she tried to paint and failed repeatedly. Talk to me, Wu said finally, setting down his phone. You're spiraling. I can see it. I'm terrified, Susan admitted. Not of the examination itself. Of what comes after. Of choosing this and then regretting it. Of not choosing it and wondering what if. Of every possible outcome. Want to know a secret? Wu asked. We're terrified too. All three of us. We've done terrible things, Susan. We've hurt people, killed people, destroyed lives. But we've never let anyone see us vulnerable. Never trusted anyone enough to show them our real selves. Tomorrow, we're supposed to be intimate with you in ways that require trust we don't know how to give. Then how do we do this? Susan asked. How do we make it real instead of just fulfilling obligations? Wu was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Can I show you something? Something I've never shown anyone except my brothers. Okay. He led her to his room, to a locked drawer in his desk. Inside were notebooks. Dozens of them, filled with handwriting in both Korean and English. I write, Wu said simply. Poetry, stories, observations. Things I can't say out loud. My brothers know I write, but they've never read any of it. It's the one part of myself I keep completely private. He handed her a notebook. Read the entry from 3 weeks ago. The day we decided you were the one. Susan opened it carefully. The entry was in English, probably written that way deliberately. Asterisk, saw her today. Susan Parker, 23, art student, desperate enough to agree to anything. That's what the file says. But her paintings say something different. They scream displacement, fractured identity, the violence of belonging nowhere. She paints what I feel but can't articulate. Masks melting into hanbok. African patterns bleeding into Korean architecture. Beauty in the collision instead of destruction. Asterisk. Asterisk Day sees strategy. Shin sees risk factors. I see someone who might understand what it's like to exist between worlds. Someone who might not run when she sees the monsters we are. Or maybe I'm projecting. Maybe I'm so desperate for connection that I'm inventing it where none exists. Asterisk. Asterisk we vote tomorrow. I already know what I'll choose. Her. Despite every logical reason to choose someone else. Her. Asterisk. Susan's hands were shaking. You wrote this before we even met. I wrote it after staring at your paintings for 6 hours, Wu said. After watching surveillance footage of you singing off-key while cleaning paintbrushes. After reading every text message you sent your siblings, telling them everything would be okay, even though you had no idea how to make that true. I wrote it after falling a little bit in love with someone I'd never met. That's not love, Susan whispered. That's obsession. Maybe Wu agreed. But obsession with your strength, your art, your capacity to hope despite everything. Is that really so terrible? Susan didn't know how to answer. So instead she asked, can I read more? All of it, Wu said. Everything I've written. Every private thought I've never shared. That's what I'm offering you, Susan. Complete transparency. My real self, not the mask I show the world. In exchange, I want the same from you. They spent the next 3 hours reading. Wu's notebooks chronicled years of loneliness, violence, searching for meaning in a life built on blood. But also beauty, observation, the way he noticed small kindnesses and held them like treasures. He wrote about his mother's garden, about Shin's nightmares, about Dae's crushing responsibility. He wrote about wanting something real in a world of transactions. You're not a monster, Susan said finally. You're a poet trapped in a monster's life. Can't I be both? Wu asked, echoing her words about roses and knives. Yes, Susan said. You can be both. Besties, this is what real intimacy looks like. Not just physical, but emotional exposure. If this moment hit you, drop a comment telling me about it. And subscribe because we're almost to the examination and everything you think you know is about to change. Evening came. The Kong family estate was even more impressive than the apartment. Traditional Korean architecture on a massive scale, gardens that looked like paintings, koi ponds that reflected moonlight like mirrors. Grandmother waited in the main hall, Dr. Kim beside her. The physician was perhaps 60, professional, her expression neutral. The examination will be conducted in the medical suite, Grandmother announced. Susan will be accompanied by one brother of her choosing. Dr. Kim will perform a standard gynecological examination. Findings will be documented, then reported to both families. Questions? I have one, Susan said, surprising everyone. What exactly constitutes proof of consummation? What is Dr. Kim looking for? Dr. Kim answered in careful English. Physical changes consistent with recent sexual activity. Specific markers that indicate penetration has occurred. The examination is clinical, not judgmental. I document what I observe, nothing more. And if the markers aren't there? Susan asked. If the examination shows I'm still a virgin? Then the treaty is void, Grandmother said simply. War begins. The songs have grounds to claim the marriage was never legitimate. Blood will flow. But if the markers are there, Susan continued, the treaty holds. The marriage is verified. Peace continues. Correct. Susan took a deep breath. Then let's be clear about what we're doing here. This isn't about invasion of my privacy or humiliation. This is about documentation. Evidence. Proof that can't be disputed. That's all. That's all, Dr. Kim confirmed. Okay, Susan said. Then I'm ready. Shin, will you come with me? Shin looked surprised but nodded. If that's what you want. It is. The medical suite was sterile, professional, nothing like the romantic setting Susan had imagined for her first time. If she was going to have a first time. That decision still hovered in the air unmade. Dr. Kim prepared her instruments with efficient professionalism. I'll step outside while you change into the gown. Shin will stay if you've requested his presence, but he'll remain where you can see him at all times. This examination is already invasive enough without adding unnecessary discomfort. I'll explain everything before I do it. You can stop me at any time. Understood. Understood, Susan said. Dr. Kim left. Susan stared at the medical gown, then at Shin. This is really happening, she said. It doesn't have to, Shin replied. We can walk out right now. Face the consequences together. You don't owe anyone access to your body, treaty or not. I know, Susan said. That's what makes this a choice. Real choice. Not coercion. Not survival. Just me deciding what I'm willing to give and why. She changed into the gown, lay on the examination table, and tried not to think about how surreal this was. Shin stood where she could see him, his expression carefully neutral, but his hands clenched into fists. Dr. Kim returned, gloved and professional. I'm going to begin now. This will be uncomfortable, but shouldn't be painful. If anything hurts, tell me immediately. The examination was clinical, detached, exactly as promised. Dr. Kim explained each step, gave Susan time to breathe, maintained professional distance. It took maybe 10 minutes, but felt like hours. Finally, Dr. Kim stepped back, removing her gloves. "You can sit up now." Susan did, her heart pounding. Well, Dr. Kim's expression was unreadable. The examination shows no physical evidence of recent sexual activity. Hymen is intact. All markers consistent with virginity. There is no consummation to verify. The words fell like stones. Shin's face went white. That means the treaty cannot be verified, Dr. Kim finished. "I'll need to report these findings to the matriarchs. They'll determine next steps." "Wait," Susan said, her mind racing. "Wait. The examination shows current status. But the treaty doesn't specify when consummation must occur before verification, right? Just that it must be verified by Friday evening." Dr. Kim paused. "That's correct. The treaty specifies verification by end of day Friday. It's currently 7:43 p.m. Friday. Technically, we have until midnight." "Then I need time," Susan said. "Private time. With my husbands. All three of them. Can you give us that?" Dr. Kim looked at grandmother, who had appeared in the doorway, clearly having been listening. "You're asking for time to consummate now?" grandmother asked. "Here? Under these circumstances?" "I'm asking for privacy to make a decision that should have been mine all along," Susan said firmly. "You want verification? Give me 2 hours with my husbands. Then Dr. Kim can examine me again. But this time, it'll be my choice. My timing. My terms." Grandmother studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled, sharp and approving. 2 hours. The eastern wing is empty. You'll have complete privacy. Dr. Kim will return at 10 p.m. for re-examination. Don't waste the time." She left, taking Dr. Kim with her. Shin immediately moved to Susan's side. "You don't have to do this," he said urgently. "Not like this. Not rushed, not pressured, not." "Get your brothers," Susan interrupted. "Now, we're doing this my way. Besties, I need you to understand something. What happens next is Susan taking complete control of her narrative. This isn't assault, isn't coercion, isn't force. This is a woman making an impossible choice on her own terms. If you're not ready for that, I understand. But if you want to see how Susan transforms a violation into empowerment, stay with me. Subscribe now because the next section is the most important part of this entire story. Day and Woo arrived within minutes. The eastern wing was traditional Korean, beautiful and private. Sleeping mats, low lighting, the scent of jasmine from the gardens. "Susan, what's happening?" Day asked immediately. "Grandmother said you requested us, but wouldn't explain why." "The examination showed I'm still a virgin," Susan said bluntly. "Which means no consummation. Which means the treaty fails unless we change that in the next 2 hours." All three brothers went completely still. "No," Day said flatly. "Not like this. Not rushed, not with a deadline, not with a doctor waiting to verify our intimacy like we're animals being bred for treaty purposes. Absolutely not." "What if I want to?" Susan asked quietly. "You can't possibly want to under these circumstances," Shin said. "This is coercion by timeline. That's not choice. Isn't it?" Susan challenged. "I could choose to let the timeline expire. Let the treaty fail. Face war. That's an option. Or I could choose to use the time we have to do something I've been thinking about for 2 days anyway. Something I want to do. Not because the treaty demands it. Because I'm attracted to you. All three of you. Because I'm curious. Because I want to know what it feels like to be touched by men who see me as more than a body. Who see my art, my mind, my strength. Who write poetry about me before we've even met." She looked at Woo specifically. "You said you were falling in love with someone you'd never met. Show me what that looks like. All of you. Show me how you make love to someone you actually care about. Not a treaty bride. Not an obligation. Me, Susan, the woman you chose." "We can't," Woo whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. "You can," Susan said. "If I'm giving permission. If I'm asking for it. If I'm telling you that I want this. Not in some romantic future moment, but now. Messy, complicated, time-pressured now. Because maybe that's more honest than pretending we can make this perfect." "I need to hear you say it clearly," Day said, his voice rough. "No ambiguity. No room for misunderstanding. Tell us exactly what you're asking for." Susan met his eyes, then Shin's, then Wu's. 3 men who'd trapped her into marriage, but somehow become something more than captors. Something like partners in an impossible situation. "I'm asking you to make love to me," she said clearly. "All 3 of you. Tonight. Before the examination. Not because the treaty demands it. Because I'm choosing it. Choosing you. Is that clear enough?" The air in the room changed instantly, charging with electricity and possibility. "You're sure?" Shin asked, moving closer. "Because once we start, Susan, everything changes. We can't undo this." "I know," Susan said. "That's what I'm counting on. I'm tired of being a victim of circumstances. Tonight, I take control. I decide what this means. I decide how this happens. And I'm deciding that I want you. All of you. On my terms." Wu reached her first, his hands gentle as they framed her face. "Then let us show you what it means to be chosen. Not taken. Chosen." What happened next was tender and intense, awkward and beautiful. Everything first time should be and rarely are. They were careful with her, attentive, making sure every touch was welcomed, every moment consensual. There was nervousness, laughter when someone bumped into someone else, whispered reassurances, and gradually building heat. Susan had painted collision her entire life. Worlds that shouldn't touch finding beauty in the meeting. This was that collision made flesh. African and Korean, desperation and choice, survival and desire, all tangled together in ways that defied categorization. Day was commanding but surprisingly gentle, guiding her through unfamiliar sensations with patience she hadn't expected. Shin was careful, almost reverent, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. Wu was tender and verbal, constantly checking in, making sure she was okay, that she wanted more. And Susan? Susan discovered she was braver than she'd known. She asked for what she wanted, said stop when something didn't feel right, learned her own body's responses through their attentive exploration. She claimed them as much as they claimed her. Besties, what happens in this room is intimate and private. Not because it's shameful, but because it's sacred. This is Susan choosing her own story, rewriting victimhood into empowerment. If that resonates with you, if you understand why this moment matters, hit that subscribe button. Comment telling me what this story meant to you. And stay until the end, because Susan's final choice is going to surprise you. Time became irrelevant. There was only sensation, connection, the strange intimacy of learning 3 different bodies while they learned hers. It wasn't perfect or practiced. It was real, messy, human. And somehow that made it more meaningful than any fantasy could have been. When it was over, Susan lay between them, her body aching in new ways, her mind quiet for the first time in days. Shin had found blankets from somewhere, draped them over everyone. They lay in comfortable silence, processing what had just happened. "Are you okay?" Day asked finally, his hand finding hers. "I don't know," Susan said honestly. "Ask me tomorrow, or next week, or next year. Right now I'm just feeling." "What are you feeling?" Wu asked, his voice soft. "Changed," Susan said. "Not broken, not damaged, just fundamentally changed. Like I was one person 2 hours ago and now I'm someone else. Someone who made an impossible choice and survived it." A knock on the door. Dr. Kim's voice. "It's 10 p.m. If you're ready, I can conduct the re-examination now." Susan sat up, pulling the blanket around herself. "Give me 5 minutes to get dressed." The second examination was briefer than the first. Dr. Kim worked quickly, professionally, documented her findings without comment. When she finished, she simply said, "The examination shows physical evidence consistent with recent sexual activity. Consummation is verified." Relief flooded the room, so tangible it was almost visible. "I'll report to the matriarchs," Dr. Kim said. "The treaty is fulfilled. The marriage is verified. Both families will be informed by morning." She paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I've conducted 17 of these examinations over 40 years. Yours is the first where everyone involved seemed to actually care about each other. That's rare. Don't waste it." She left. Susan dressed slowly, her body reminding her with every movement what she'd done, what she'd chosen. Grandmother appeared as they emerged from the eastern wing. "It's done then. The marriage is real. The treaty holds. The songs cannot challenge it now without looking petty and powerless. You've won." "Have we?" Susan asked tiredly. Because from where I'm standing, I just had sex under a deadline to prevent a war I didn't start. That doesn't feel like winning. You survived, grandmother said firmly. You adapted. You took control of an impossible situation and bent it to your will. That's winning in our world, girl. Get used to it. She moved closer, studying Susan's face. The contract says 1 year. After that, you're free to leave with your money. Will you? I don't know, Susan admitted. Ask me in a year. I'm asking now, grandmother insisted. Because these boys, they're already in love with you. I can see it. If you're planning to leave, tell them now. Let them protect their hearts before they're too invested. Susan looked at the three brothers standing behind her. Day with his commanding presence and hidden gentleness. Shin with his scars and poetry written in violence. Wu with his notebooks and impossible romanticism. Three men who'd trapped her, saved her, chosen her, changed her. I can't promise forever, Susan said. But I can promise I'll stay until staying isn't the right choice anymore. For me or for them. That's the best I can offer. That's fair, grandmother said, surprising everyone. That's more honest than most marriages built on love. At least you're clear about uncertainty. She turned to leave, then paused. The jade bracelet. You're still wearing it. Should I not be? Susan asked. Only if you mean to stay in this family, grandmother said. That bracelet is a promise. A claim. If you wear it, you're saying you're ours. Completely. Are you ready for that? Susan touched the bracelet, feeling its weight. 6 generations of women who'd worn it. Women trapped by treaties and blood oaths and impossible circumstances. But also women who'd survived, adapted, found ways to thrive in impossible situations. I'll wear it until it doesn't fit anymore, Susan said. Physically or emotionally. When that day comes, I'll take it off. Until then, I'm yours. Good enough, grandmother said and left. 6 months later, Susan stood in a Seoul gallery, her first Korean exhibition opening to a packed crowd. The paintings were different from her American work. Still exploring displacement, but now including collision, integration, the strange beauty of impossible combinations. The centerpiece was titled Treaty Roses. 3 identical faces surrounded by flowers that bled into knives. Beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. It had sold before the exhibition opened, purchased anonymously for an amount that made Susan's Atlanta debts look like pocket change. She knew who'd bought it. Her husbands, because that's what they'd become. Not perfectly, not easily, but real. They fought, negotiated, learned each other's boundaries and breaking points. Some days Susan still thought about leaving. Most days she thought about staying. Her grandmother was in remission, responding to treatments that seemed almost miraculous. Marcus and Maya were thriving at Emory, visiting Seoul during breaks, slowly accepting their sister's impossible life. Her art was selling internationally, galleries clamoring for her unique perspective on cultural collision. Penny for your thoughts, Wu said, appearing beside her with champagne. Just thinking about how my life exploded and reassembled into something I never expected, Susan said. Regrets? Shin asked from her other side. Some, Susan admitted. But also gratitude. Also curiosity about what comes next. Also love, maybe, though I'm still figuring out what that means with 3 people. We have time to figure it out, Day said, his hand finding her lower back. Protective but not possessive. Unless you're planning to leave? Not today, Susan said, the answer she'd been giving for months. Ask me tomorrow. I will, all 3 brothers said together, smiling. Susan looked around the gallery. Her art, her family, her impossible life, her strange, beautiful marriage built on treaties and desperation and eventually choice. It wasn't what she'd planned. It was better and worse and more complicated than any plan could have been. The jade bracelet caught the light as she raised her champagne glass. 6 generations of women, now 7. All of them surviving impossible circumstances in their own ways. All of them finding strength in spaces between worlds. To collision, Susan said, toasting. To creation, her husbands replied. To choosing each other, Susan finished. Every single day. And for now, for today, that was enough. Besties, we made it to the end. Susan's story started with kidnapping and coercion, but ended with choice and empowerment. That's the journey I wanted to show you. Not perfect, not easy, but real. If this story moved you, changed you, made you think differently about survival and choice, please subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear that even in impossible situations, we can find ways to take back our power. Comment telling me what moment hit you hardest. And remember, your story isn't over either. You're still writing it. Make it count. Thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting me with Susan's story. Until next time, besties, keep choosing yourselves.